Time is never found again. Or is it? By blahblahblah1703. My first Hunger Games fix, guys. Chapter 1. I wake up with my heart pounding and blood rushing through my ears, scarcely able to breathe, but somehow managing through my panic. The last thing I remember is leaving Snow in his greenhouse, the sickly sweet smell of roses making me sick to my stomach. And that was before the revelation. Snow didn't send those parachutes. The ones that killed my little sister. My little dog. I knew he has every reason to lie to me. But as he said, we agreed to never lie to each other. No matter how psychopathic, delusional, and deranged he is, he has never lied to me that I know of. Which leads me to the conclusion that coin killed my little sister after placing her there in the first place. The grief, rage, and panic that floods my bloodstream causes me to flee what I can't fight. The truth. As I slowly succumb to my new reality, I feel, more than hear, someone come up beside me, and they start talking quietly to me, rubbing my back to help soothe me. It's a woman, but my brain is already overloaded and can't process her words. I can only try to grip onto the sound of her voice, but I can feel it slowly fading away as I shut down. The final thing I remember is a pinch in the crook of my elbow. A sedative. The only thing that can calm me down now. Once I would have had Prim and Peter calm me down. However, Peter is almost as lost to me as Prim is. His hijacking still affects him in ways we might not ever know, and thus never fix. So I may never get my boy with the bread back. I expect to wake up in the hospital, or even my assigned room in the mansion. What I am not expecting is for a head of blonde hair to be the first thing I see when I wake up. The threadbare sheets slightly scratchy against my legs. My head rested on an almost completely flat pillow, once again shared by the head of blonde hair. I know I must be losing it right now. Stuck in some kind of medically induced coma, or something similar. This old bed, in this old house, still bursting with memories of my father, at a time I still had a mother, not to mention the images of Prim, twirling around the living room, hugging Buttercup, milking Lady in the backyard. The smell of mint tea, herbal remedies, and the always present smell of coal dust and despair, evenly distributed across the seam. Because that's where my panic-induced hallucination has put me. Right back into the small coal-infused house that is the home of my childhood. I quickly realise the blonde hair, braided into 2 long braids, belongs to my little sister. Or my delusion of her. Either way, I am not one to pass up on an opportunity like this. I quickly wrap her up in my arms, dragging her back into my chest, making the most of having her with me, and, for just this moment, I can pretend this is real. My hallucination isn't helping. My subconscious must have had an amazing memory, because in my everyday life, I do not think I remember this many details about my old home. The little things. Like the exact way Buttercup had scratched up the bedpost of our bed. The way our old pillowcase had little holes in the seams. Or the way the window panes were slightly off-put, leaving a drafty breeze to rush into our shared room. I just soak it all in. Every little reminder of a simpler life, not one focused on politics or the power struggle between 2 dictators. Just one keeping my little sister alive and happy, best as I was able. I keep my arm wrapped around her as I slowly drift off, expecting to wake alone in a fluorescent lighted hospital with the smell of bleach and the sound of a heart monitor. Instead, I once again wake in my childhood bedroom, this time with Prim shaking me awake, a smile on her face. "Katniss! Finally! I've been trying to wake you up for ages. Why aren't you hunting with Gale? I thought you always agreed to meet up with him at dawn on New Year's Day." Prim asked, confused but not unhappy. I looked at her, confused New Year's Day? I thought New Year's was in a month or so. Why would my subconscious change the date? New Year's? I grumbled tiredly, not quite awake yet. Yeah, New Year's. First day of the 74th year after the Dark Days. The year you turned 16 and I turned 12. Prim lists off, unknowingly confusing me even more. 74th year after the Dark Days? Also known as the year of the 74th Annual Hunger Games? I remember this day. Waking up at dawn, meeting Gale in the woods to go through the snare line, and then making our way through the freezing cold wind to get a few rabbits. An unusually good haul for this time of year, something both our families desperately needed. I jump up quickly, even though I am so confused. I barely know which way is up. I know I need to see Gale. Whether it is to help get food for my little duck, or to see if I can see the man Gale becomes in my seemingly very real delusion of his past self. If Coin is responsible for killing Prim, I know who gave her the means to do so. The hummingbird trap. The ill regard for human life. The lack of decency and restraint shown by my once best friend. The Gale I met in the woods at 12 is not the man who used humanity's innate goodness as a weapon against them. I just need to know when he changed into the man he became. At what point did he decide vengeance was worth more than my little sister's life? Was it before this point, or after I volunteered? Was it due to his overwhelming jealousy of Peter, who I know is the only person I have ever loved outside my small family? I slip into my hunting clothes and my father's jacket. I grab my canteen and fill it with the steaming mint tea sitting on our wood stove, a staple in the Everdeen abode. Bundled up so that you can barely see my face, I kiss Prim's forehead, telling her I will be back in a few hours, adding, if I don't wake up from my coma before then, in my head. Unable to tell my little sister anything that could cause her to worry about me, and head towards the hole in the fence right behind our house. I barely fit through it anymore, even with my small stature. One of the many reasons I prefer the hole in the meadow. Not to mention, I keep my favourite and most used bow there. My father had multiple hidden throughout the woods. I doubt I'll ever find them all. I know there are more arrow stashes out there, along with more supplies, including the spiles for the few maple trees that we have in the surrounding woods. Eventually, I make it to the rocky overhang that is our usual meet-up spot. I saw 2 of our snares, empty, on the way there. I can only hope Gale has already done the loop, and we have the same haul as last time. 2 squirrels and a fat groundhog. Not the best haul, but we can sell the groundhog to Greasy Say for her mystery meat stew, and the hide for material for hats and gloves, or whatever the buyer wants it for. With all the snow on the ground and the freezing wind, the furry hide, even if it is not the softest, can still get a pretty penny in the hob. As I look around the overlook, I see Gale coming from the far side of our snare loop. A half-full game bag slung over his shoulder. He smiles as he sees me, but I can tell he's a little upset by my tardiness. "Catnip," he said quietly, not wanting to scare off any close game. "Where were you this morning? We were supposed to meet up at dawn, right?" The question comes out a little slightly snappy, but not biting like my real Gale would have said it. "I overslept," I said simply, preoccupied with trying to figure out his mood and temperament. Is this the same man who made it possible for Coin to kill my little sister? "Okay," he said, not upset but definitely confused, knowing I never sleep in. My body conditioned to waking up before the sun slips out from over the mountains. "Should we look around for a bit? The snare line did pretty well. Not like in the summer, but the best haul we've got since September at least," he said, slightly perked up from his morose mood, and excited for a little bit more food into his family, his mother, and his 3 little siblings, 11, almost 12-year-old Rory, 10-year-old Vic, and 4-year-old Posy. I just nod and start walking deeper into the woods. My woods. the ones burnt to a crisp by the firebomb snow dropped on my district after the quell. I take a deep breath, inhaling the sharp, fresh air, so unlike the coal and smoke-heavy air inside the district, or the stale air of District 13. Even the slightly sweet and vaguely artificial air in the capital is nothing compared to my woods. I barely hear Gale's tread as he follows me, but the 2 sets of Hunger Games, and over half a year of war, has honed my senses even more than they were when I lived through this time. We thankfully don't talk as we hunt, too scared to scare away the game when there is so little to begin with. I hit 2 rabbits, and Gale gets a third within 2 hours. Those kills, along with the squirrels and the groundhog, and somehow a 4th rabbit, which I cannot explain as to why my subconscious added, can feed our families for today, with the leftover to trade to get coins or candles or soap. Not to mention the fattest squirrel we can take over to the bakery in order to trade for 2 very stale loaves. Normally we would get a better trade for 2 squirrels, 2 barely stale loaves, or 1 fresh one, but the single squirrel, while fat, doesn't give us the best trade. Meat is meat, however, and in this place, you take every morsel you can get. The entire time we are standing at the back door of the cinnamon and dill-smelling building, I try to crane my neck to take a look at Peter, to see if my lover is still delusional, or if it is the mutt in the capital, Snow, made him into. However, I can't see more than a foot to either side of the door from my position, so I quickly give up. Content to believe my boy with the bread is inside baking, not chained up in a hospital bed back in the capital, or in 13. We quickly complete our trade, taking a loaf home along with a handful of coins, mine barely larger due to my need to take less meat home for my smaller family. I take home 2 rabbits, and Gale takes back the other 2, and the remaining squirrel. We sold the groundhog meat to Greasy Say, getting a few coins each, and we sold the hide for a few more to the tanner in the hob, who was grateful for the new material, especially a furry one in the middle of winter, when most people break down and buy his wares, hoping to avoid frostbite during the coldest months. Neither of us need anything desperately, and we're excited to take home our little batch of coins. I split with Gale as soon as I can, not sure what I'm thinking about his part in killing Prim. But I need to know I will wake up from this dream at some point, and I need to spend as much time with my sister as possible, not her killer. I walk in the door, place the meat in the icebox for our mother to prepare later, or for me to make soup with if she can't get out of bed. One of the only things I'm capable of making taste even slightly okay. I put the coins in my hidden collection underneath the loose floorboard in our room, a hiding place known only to me. I count how many there are, not remembering the exact number, and I see that there are less than I want. Something not unusual during this time in my life. However, it's still concerning, and I vow to head out extra early tomorrow, if I even wake up here, in order to get more hunting time in, to make up for my late start today. I head back out of the door and walk right around to our shack of a home, to see Prim sitting on a damp log and milking Lady, getting less than usual. However, that's not surprising, considering the time of year. Lady usually gives more in the summer. Prim stands up after deciding that's all that she was going to get, slightly jumping when she sees me due to my soft tread. She was unable to hear me sneaking up on her. I just laugh softly. I have missed her so much these last 2 weeks. I haven't started losing my memories of her scent, or her slightly crooked teeth. I knew she is still waiting for 2 of her molars to fall out, but they will be out by the time the games roll around. She smiles her shy and slightly embarrassed smile at me, her little cheeks red, and not nearly chubby enough for my liking. She pokes my arm in reproach, and complains about me sneaking up on her, telling me I almost made her spill the milk. I don't even care. I just pull her into my side, easing the bucket from her hands as we walk into the house, and remove our shoes and coats. I set the bucket on the table, and whip back towards her, tickling her armpits and stomach, and that special spot behind her knee that makes her giggle like nothing else. Both our cheeks are flushed from the cold as well as our laughter. I eventually stop and let her catch her breath, basking in her residual giggles. I watch her with a small smile on my face. When she finally stops giggling, she looks at me questioningly. I just shake my head at her and tell her I love her, barely holding back my tears. Surprised when my voice came out steady and unwavering. She responds in kind and gives me a prim-patented rib-cracking hug that causes me to fall back, but allows me to wrap my arms around her, keeping her warm and safe within my embrace. My little duck. I spend the rest of the day with her, talking, doing our homework, even though I know it's pointless. We end up making dinner, our mother too wrapped up in herself to get out of bed. Of course, I understand her more now. The only thing that allowed me to even slightly function when Peter was in the capital was my anger, and the fact that my cooperation is the only thing that would get him rescued. I can't forgive her for leaving her daughters to fend for themselves, for leaving me to raise Prim by myself at the age of 11, but I can understand it now, allowing me to just let her be instead of screaming at her to get up like I had in my real time through this. By the time it is time to slide into our shared bed, under the slightly scratchy sheets, our heads rested upon the same, almost completely flat pillow, one blonde and one dark-haired. The old mattress is on the even older bed frame, scratched up by my sister's devil cat. The same ever-present smell of mint tea and herbal remedies, mixed in with the smell of coal and smoke ever present in the scene. All of this, a comforting blanket on my obviously delirious mind. A nice send-off back to the real world. I go to bed knowing I will wake up in the hospital room to the smell of bleach and the beeping of my heart monitor. Back to the real world, where my little sister will not be curled up beside me, but rather 6 feet underground. I have to consciously make a decision not to think about it. I just pull Prim that much closer, leaning down to press a kiss to her braided blonde baby hair, wishing that I was actually back in this time, rather than completely alone. End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed this one. This is actually my favourite Hunger Games fanfiction. I've been rereading this for ages and there are sequels. You guys are gonna love this. I was inspired by the Sunrise on the Reaping trailer, but that's one of the books I don't actually read. I like the original trilogy because it does end with eventually the games being over, but I've been trying to avoid fics that make me depressed, and that includes canon ones as well, and what I know happens to Haymitch, I don't want to know in any further detail. I've seen spoilers, I don't want to see more. Anyway, you guys know the drill. Like, comment and subscribe and hit that bell to get notified for whenever I upload a new video. Have a good day, night or whatever time zone you're in. Bye my guys, gals and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video. Take care.